Hey everybody, my name is Josh with Late Start Piano. Today I'm going to tell you why you don't want to practice and what you can do about it going forward. So, practicing the piano, practicing anything, especially something like the piano that takes years and decades of practice and time to master, there's going to be times when you practice that it's going to be boring. And really, that's I think the big thing that it comes down to is people get bored of it. It's not that practicing something is really difficult. It's not that it's something that you can't do. It's not that it's something that it brings you so much pain that you can't do it. It's nothing like that. It's just the fact that people get bored. And especially today when we have these phones within arm's reach at all times, we have all these social media apps and everything else that you guys have heard about 1,000 times before. All these different things that can distract you, and basically all these things that are pulling your mind away and screaming at you for the attention. So something like piano, where maybe you're practicing the same section in the song over and over and over again because you're not quite getting it right. Once you hit that 10th time practicing the same section or practicing that same scale, chances are you're going to get pretty bored. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that you're lazy because you get bored. I'm not saying you're stupid because you get bored, but that's just part of being human, is that we get bored. Again, especially in today's environment. I would actually recommend, if you like to read and you haven't read the book already, you should read Mastery by Robert Greene. Again, that book is called Mastery by Robert Greene. He dives into what he calls the apprenticeship phase. Whenever you want to get really good at something, whenever you want to reach that mastery level, everybody has to go through this apprenticeship phase. And he talks about one of the biggest things that hold people back from advancing past the apprenticeship to the next stage is getting bored. So, how can you counteract this boredom that you feel when you play the piano? First of all, I talked about this in another video, but you can have one day a week where you basically do whatever you want. It's still practicing, but you're more, I would say, playing the piano versus practicing the piano. So if you practice 7 days a week like I do, take one day a week. My day is usually Sundays. And on Sundays, for example, you just play the piano, you do whatever you want. You don't practice scales, you don't practice any kind of technique, you don't practice arpeggios, you don't work on the piece or song that you're working on right now. You don't do any of that. All you do is sit down at the piano and you do whatever you want. If you want to make up your own song, if you want to work on improvising, if you want to work on ear training, let's say you play a brand new song that you haven't heard before and you just work on writing out the chords for that song, you can do that. If you just want to play songs that you've already mastered, you just want to have fun and actually play the piano without, quote unquote, practicing that as well, then that's great. But I found out for me that this works great because it's kind of like a reset. You don't want to be hammering in the same piece or the same exercise every single day for hours, because that's when that boredom comes in. And that's when I think you kind of hit that point where you're practicing, but you're not really there mentally. And if you're not really there mentally, you're not thinking about what you're doing, that's when you're practicing. You're basically wasting your time because you're not fully invested in what you're doing. I'm sure you've had that moment where your mind starts to wander off and you start thinking about what you're going to have for dinner that night, or you start thinking about these chores that you have to get done, or maybe your cat needs to get fed or whatever, and you kind of start zoning off. Especially in hand-in exercises. I know if you play piano, you know what I'm talking about. When you play those hand-in exercises, or if you run through scales, it's the same thing. Once you have the muscle memory down, you start playing it, and then you start to zone off. And that's not what you want to do. Even if you know everything about the certain scale that you're working on or the hand-in exercise, you still want to be mentally checked in with what you're doing so that you can have the most amount of progress possible and that you're not just wasting your time. So another thing that you can do to counteract that boredom is just switch up the order of what you're doing on your practice days. So for example, what I normally do is I start out with a hand-in exercise, then I do maybe 5 minutes of scale work, and then I do this chord warm-up that I've been doing for a little while. So that's basically my warm-up. I do scales, hand-in exercise, and then my chord progression warm-up that I've been doing. After that, I usually go into the piece I'm working on. I'm working on a few at once, so I usually have 2 or 3. And I spend, let's say, 30 minutes working on each piece, get to the next one. And then the last 10 minutes or so, I'm working on my own improvisation. That's pretty much what I do every single day. And if you get bored on one of these days, just reverse the order of what you're doing. So whatever you do last, like in my case, I usually improvise last. You can start with that. Move that to the front piece, front half of your practice session. Then go into working on the songs that you're playing, and then finally end with the technique stuff. End with the hand and drills, the scales, and the chord warm up or whatever else that you do. Just changing the order of your practice routine is going to help break up that boredom. It's going to help break up that mundane routine that so many people get caught up into. And really what it's going to do, the big benefit, is it's going to bring you back mentally because you're doing something that's different. So your mind's going to say, wow, we don't normally do this. What's going on? And it's going to lock you in much more and allow you to focus much more on what you're doing than if you just keep the pattern going. So that's another trick that you can do whenever you feel that boredom start to set in. Just switch up that order. And again, make sure you take one day a week, just have your fun day, your fun practice day, where you do whatever you want. You just play for fun or you work on anything that you want to do. So I hope that helps. My name is Josh with Late Start Piano, and good luck with your piano journey.